I teach afternoon and evening classes for several years now. So when there was week of prayer schedule, it never occurred to me that I thought we shortened the classes. I didn't know that we started earlier. But we'll be glad to have a full time together. I hope that the week of prayer was valuable for many of you. Those that helped to present it and those that enjoyed it in the congregation. Let's bow our heads, and even though it's not a week of prayer, we'll start the week of prayer. Father in heaven, would you please let us experience your Spirit as we consider with our minds spirituality. In Jesus' name, amen. On your attendance roster, you're going to be up first. Okay. On the attendance roster, there's a place to put your comments and questions. Any question that you have that isn't something that would benefit the whole class, any comments you want to just make real tiny about, hey, I need to talk with you about such and such, and I haven't been able to reach you, or whatever. I can't even anticipate what it might be. If you're wanting to remind one of us of something, then that's the place. I was just telling them that I made a note here. I changed the comments thing where it did ask you for your phone number, and then it asked you for your major and for your career choice, or the other way around. Now it says comments or questions for the instructor, or TA or instructor. Okay? You have a question that will benefit everybody.
So you can post a discussion through video, audio, whatever it may be, at any time, but you can also go back and edit it. So my question was, could we post the date and the class before class, and then go back and submit the class little summary and the video after? Because I'm not sure if it'll leave a timestamp for the last edit, or just leave the timestamp for when you first submitted.
Okay, so we're experimenting. He posted before class started, and then he's going to add the thing to it, and we're going to see if it makes the timestamp for the edit. I think it might say that he edited at a certain time on it in the shell. If it does, then what we'll go by for, in other words, who's the first four or whatever, what we'll go by is the last edit. So if that's the case, if we find in today's experiment, which we'll report on Wednesday, or you can even comment right in your posting, and then everybody will know. And that'll be how we finish the experiment. You can report the results for us. So if we find out that it is true that that it notes the edit, says edited by, and then you can't tell when it was posted, then we'll go by that. So that means once you put something up, don't change it, because it moves down to the bottom of the line if you do that. Does that make sense? But if what he does shows us, yeah, we can tell when he first posted it, plus we can see the edits. We don't know what the edits are, but so because of that, we might have to, if that's what it is, if we can't tell what the edits were, then we'll have to just say the last thing you do to it is when we count that you turned it in.
I have another question. So for where we post our potential questions,
Yes, sir.
You said you were going to comment on them either yes, you were going to use it, or no, you're not going to use it?
No, only if I say yes.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to say no,
Okay.
because I might come back later and get it. I have many times looked back to things that were the earliest postings in the class and said, hey, I'm buying this for the final. Like the week and a half before the term ends.
So have you bought any?
I haven't bought
Okay.
anything.
That's what I want to make sure.
So you're safe. There's going to be no quiz today. There's going to be no quiz today. So today you're safe. Yes, indeed. Rob, I saw Robin's whole day change right there. It was like, and I thought I was in trouble because I prioritized other things. I thought I'll get to this in case he does it Wednesday, but I've got this other thing on Sunday, and I just can't. And now I'm feeling like there might be a God. Indeed. And in terms of feeling like there might be a God, before we do the sacred, a little bit of the profane, what do you call a guy laying in a ditch, black and blue? That's the guitarist who made one too many drummer jokes. I just had to return to that theme just a little bit. And I owe one to the sound man. We'll get to it tomorrow. Who was the sound man again? You're the sound man. We'll get you on the your sound man day is coming. Okay, because I got some sound man material. This book, which you were assigned to read, we're on like the 4th chapter now. We're starting the 4th chapter. Is that correct?
Starting.
We're just starting the
Next
4th.
class.
Starting what?
For next class, I think.
For the next class,
for
the
the next
4th one
reading,
is
yeah.
due. Okay. This book is not only like a how-to manual to become a Christian. It actually, in reading through it, has some things that are uniquely Christian. They're not going to be something that would help. Well, I mean, it might help you to be a better Buddhist, but they're not really. Some of the things in here are uniquely about Christian spirituality. Most of what's in here, however, though, is that kernel that you're going to find in most spiritualities, most really intense, the real authentic spirituality. Most of it is not just cultural trappings from Christian tradition. Now there may be some language, because everybody speaks a language and everybody's part of a culture, and you can't say or write anything without having some of your culture in it and your language, because language cannot be stripped of culture. But there's some things at the heart of this that, in my opinion, but not just my opinion, even there are some great spiritual commentators through history that have commented about some aspect, one particular aspect of Christianity that actually isn't the same as other very strong spiritual traditions. Christianity has something about it that's a bit unique. And we touched on this a little bit last week, but I want to make a big deal out of this because the direction we go in making something expressly special about Christian spirituality, not to disparage other spiritualities, not to criticize, not to say, hey, we're better than them, because that's not a spiritual thing to do. That's anti-spiritual when you do that about other people's stuff. That is not Christian, and it's not, well, it might be Christian, but it's not the way Jesus did it. A lot of Christians do it. But this thing actually is a little bit different twist. It's going into another realm of spirituality that the very popular spiritualities, they don't say don't, but they don't really ask you to. If we look at the Golden Rule, and the Golden Rule is not unique to Christianity. Jesus is not the first person to state what has come to be called the Golden Rule. Jesus never said, okay, I'm going to tell you guys the Golden Rule. This is what we'll from now on call the Golden Rule. Other people named it that. But Jesus gave, you could call it a heuristic, you could call it an algorithm, you could almost call it a rubric for going beyond ethics. It's in dealing with living among others, having community. How do you treat other people? And it's tempting to say that there's so many things, like to just be religious or to be a decent person or to be spiritual or whatever. There's this big checklist, And somewhere in there, down item number 14 or something is, oh yeah, don't be a jerk to everybody. Let's just put that on there, put it on the list, but that's down there somewhere and everything. It's not. It's not down there somewhere on Jesus' list. But it is down on some lists. It's like, oh yeah, and you also got to remember that you live in community. After you say 100 things about exotic kinds of meditation and getting your poop in a group and everything, and your psychology and everything, it's not. Then it's like, and by the way, also you got to come down from the mountain, and when you're down there, don't abuse people. It's not like that in Jesus' program, but it really, honestly, is like that in some spiritualities. So it's one thing among several that makes Christian spirituality something special. Now, does that mean that there's nothing about some other spiritualities that they might even emphasize some things that are really important more than Christian spirituality? I'm going to say yes, they do. There's actually some strong things about some other spirituality traditions that I'd have to look at and go, they emphasize that more even than Christians have emphasized. Now, does that mean Jesus didn't emphasize it? Well, we don't know for sure. Because if we look in the Gospels and we don't see a big emphasis on something, that doesn't mean Jesus didn't emphasize it. The last verse of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the last verse that you'll read for the readings in this class, the Bible readings for this class. So don't forget to notice when you're reading the last verse on the list. The last verse of the book of John is the last book of the Gospel, the last verse of the Gospels. And it says something that humbles me. And it has to make it so that we don't ever say, oh, well, Jesus didn't say that, so it's not Christian to say that, or it's not Jesus. He didn't say, he left it out, we have to leave it. No, he didn't. We have a minuscule little fraction of the things that Jesus said and did that were selected by people who each had a personal agenda. Inspired, yes, but they're still as human as ever when they wrote and decided what not to write. I'll give you a powerful example of that in a moment. Last verse of the book of John. Just let's turn to it. Let's turn to the last verse in the book of John. If you don't have your green Bibles with you, I want you to have them Wednesday. You may find that having your actual classroom Bible, the actual, with the same pages as this, you may find that if you don't have it in your hand when we have a quiz, you may miss a lot of points on the quiz because one of the quiz questions might be for the TA to check with his initials that you have one in your hand. Okay? So get that, or you're going to lose points.
Are you okay with us bringing like our personal Bibles?
I'm okay with you bringing it, but not instead.
Okay.
The reason is there will be people here who don't know how to find everything really fast, and you may open something and you say, oh, no. You need to be able to say, for somebody over here who's never done Bible before, it's on page 41
Okay.
in the New Testament, okay? So I want everyone ready now? Literally reading off the same page. All right? But for now, whatever you have, the last verse of the book of John. And I have never memorized anything other than in the King James or in the Greek. That's not to say that I'm showing some sort of preference, I think it's textually superior. It is not textually superior. It's not the most accurate translation. But it's what I started with, and I got used to that 400-year-old plus language, and I'm used to it. I like it. It's familiar to me, and it has a specialness to it for me. So I just always memorize in King James English. But I don't trust its translation when I'm doing theology. I'll check and make sure, looking in the Greek, looking at a more accurate translation like maybe the Revised Standard Version or something like that. I'm going to trust that better than I'm going to trust the way. But I like the way it sounds. You got some people who are some who say things really nicely. They're a great speaker. But you know other people who are a lot smarter than that speaker and say things that are more accurate, and they don't say nonsense as often, but they don't say it as pretty. The King James says it very pretty to me, and that's just an aesthetic preference. The last verse, though, says, and there are many other things that Jesus did, the which, if they should all be written down, the world itself would, I suppose the world itself would not contain the volumes which would be written. Think about what that means. Don't say, well, it's not there in the Bible, Jesus doing it. That means he didn't. That's nonsense reasoning. There's so many more things than what we have written that Jesus did do. So if there happens to be something that another spiritual tradition says, or somebody who you don't even consider very spiritual says about how to treat other people, and you go, wow, that's really excellent. I wonder why Jesus didn't say it. We don't know he didn't say it. We also don't know he did. Just because it's a good idea and it fits well with our theology doesn't mean Jesus said it when we don't have it written. We need to remain humble about that and say, could be. Now that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing. There's two kinds of people. There's a lot of, you can say there's two kinds of people in about a lot of kinds of things. But one of the four continua of persona descriptions that Carl Jung used was the difference between a person who's a judger or a perceiver. He adopted those words and then he gave them kind of new meanings. They don't mean you're a judgmental person, and then you're perceiving other people are perceiving. It just doesn't mean that. A judger is the kind of person, and we're, maybe we're split 50-50. I don't remember what the ratio is on this one in the species or in our culture. Maybe it varies by culture. But he said that in describing a person's personality, their psyche, whatever, their mental programming, some people would consider something to be good when it goes by the plan. You make a plan, and then you stick to the plan. Okay? You're going to go on vacation, you figure out where you're going to go. And then you make some plans. If you need to rent an RV or you rent a car, then do it. Way in advance so you don't get there and they don't have it. If you want to stay somewhere in hotels or campgrounds, you make the reservations. That means you need to know what you're going to do, what day. And in fact, if you're going to be in Seattle on vacation and you want dinner on Tuesday night, go online and find recommendations for the kind of restaurant where you want to eat, and then get a reservation so you don't get there and go, oh, too bad, they're full up tonight and we can't eat there, and I wanted to when we were in Seattle. No, you plan the thing out. And then when you get there and you go on your vacation, then when it's time to do the thing the way you planned, you check it off, and then somebody says, well, how was your vacation when you come home? Or how was vacation going? They're talking to you on your cell. Excellent. Everything went off without a hitch. Everything went according to plan. And if they know you, they know that's a good vacation. Now, the other kind of person, the person who doesn't have to know in advance and doesn't have to follow the rules, that kind of person likes surprises. That kind of person, you want to know if they had a good trip. They're going to tell you about these things. We met these people, and then the whole agenda was, we were going to go on to Idaho. We never did. We stayed in Seattle the whole time, believe it or not. We called the airline. We changed our tickets twice. We did this. We never even thought about this, but we took the ferry around Puget Sound, saw some eagles, and it was great. And then we rented a car, so we could go, we could drive up in the mountains, and then we got a flat tire, and believe it or not, we had to stay in the back seat of the car with our sleeping bags, in the middle of nowhere, and it was awesome. What an adventure. And if they were with one of these judger kind of person, that judger is going to have to make a medical appointment for their ulcer from that vacation. Because the vacation was ruined, and it was garbage. It's just terrible. Now, this is going to result in experiencing spirituality very differently. Very, very, very different if you ask a person who has experienced some real spiritual surprise, things that they didn't expect at all, and it puts their whole life up sideways. One of those people is going to say that that's the most wonderful thing that ever happened to them. Whereas another person is going to say, I had a bad experience, and so I had to distance myself from that for a bit. I'm not sure about that anymore. As somebody you're getting close to, and you're trying to share something that they have requested because they saw you having a peace that they don't have, or a joy that they don't have, and they were in, they felt in emptiness, so they come to you and say, would you please share with me whatever it is that's making you like that? You've been a neighbor, you work together, and you go, sure. You're sharing with, and it's happening with two people at the same time. Someone else overhears and says, yeah, me too. But you got one of each kind of person, and you share the same thing, and they each have a similar experience when you share. And one of them, after a few days of spending time with you and hearing what you're saying, says, you know what, I'm going to put that on hold for right now. And the other person says, this is awesome. I'm going to could you tell my son? Could you tell my girlfriend? Say what you said. Say it like I can't say I tried and I can't find that place, with you. And they're having this different experience. That doesn't mean one of them is somehow inferior to the other. There's these vast differences. But to the person who's the judger, again, please don't misinterpret that and say that's a person who's judgmental of everybody all the time. Those things don't have to overlap. It could be somebody who's very, very gracious about everyone else's thing, and they can still be a judge. They can be very lenient on everybody all the time and just stay out of everyone's business. And they just go, no, I'm not going to judge them, whatever. But I got my program and I'm sticking to it, and I hope life goes that way. But when you say that last verse in the book of John, that's a glorious thing for somebody who likes it not closed off, settled, and nailed down. But it's a tragedy of mismatch. It's a challenge in the face of a judger to hear that we don't know. We don't know. We all have certain possibilities for shortcomings. And for some people, the shortcomings are one kind, and for another person, they're another way. Tell me if you've ever known people that differ like this. One person gets all their stuff done early, and they check it off the list, and they have a list. And the list is right. They've been through their course syllabi for all 7 of their classes. They have a job, and they've got an appointment book, or they keep the calendar on their phone, or whatever. And when it's time to be there, they're there 10 minutes early. And if they're not, there was a tragedy, and they're probably laying beside the road half dead or something. Because they do not be there when they're supposed to. And they know where they're supposed to be at all times. And they're correct. They're correct about just about everything. If there's a test, they've got all their notes together. People come to them and say, hey, could you help me out with it because I can't find mine. Yeah. And they say, well, yeah, that's because you have a pig hole instead of a desk. It's stacked 7 feet high with everything, including, looks like cafeteria plates and styrofoam containers and socks and things. But not this other person. They're all squared away. They're always all squared away. They do it right. But then the person with the desk stacked all high, that doesn't seem to even know where they're going. Somebody walks by them in the dorm lobby, and they're sitting there kind of looking out the window smiling, and they go, where were you? What do you mean? Well, Christian spirituality class. Well, this is Tuesday. No, dude, this is Wednesday. Oh, so it is. They just they're not on the program. But when you get with them, they'll make you feel good, even about you. They don't ever make you feel bad about you. Ever known anybody like that? They just make you happy. They're so kind, but they're so disorganized. And then Mr. Organization, or Ms. Organization, something always makes you feel like you're not enough. It's not just that they're organized, because there's people that are super organized that are also super affirming and very warm. Those are, I'm just saying that those things don't have to go together. But those are two different things. But I'm going to say that the people who are all super organized and got their program going, it's more of an intentional effort. They have to be working at making you feel warm and alive and good. A lot more. Okay? Will the other person who makes you feel all good and everything, will they let you down? Most of the time, they'll let you down. And that doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy at all. It's hard for them to be responsible. It's hard for them, and if they decide they need to do something a certain way to make things better for themselves and other people, they're going to make a resolution about it. And if they tell you about it, you're going to go, "Nah, I'm sure you will," because you know they don't have any willpower, right? They're very sweet and loving and everything, but they're kind of they're not locked down and squared away, and their poop is everywhere. It's all over their desk, and they can't find socks that match when they're late, and sometimes the drawer that the socks live in is on the floor of their dorm room. I know this. After 9.5 years as dean of Newton Hall, I know there's guys who, for some reason, I don't have any idea why it seemed more convenient, but all the drawers were on the floor instead of pushed into the dresser. Like, they don't get that you can pull it out and push it back closed,
Would you say it's because they lack discipline or they're selfish?
There's two things going on there, because both kinds of people can be selfish, right? But even if you care about other people, but you just can't ever get any of your intentions carried forward, you can really want to, but you just can't keep a linear process long enough to actually get anything done. You talk a lot of stuff, you have great intentions, but when you promise something, people know that you're loving and everything, but you can't be counted on. When it's really important to get something done, they're going to look for the other kind of person, aren't they? They're going to want you there when they want to relax, if they can find you. They're going to bother and make a plan. They'll make a plan and go, "Well, yeah, if he's there, if she's there." But each person's shortcomings are truly shortcomings, but they're not the same ones. It would be progress for some people to relax and let a plan go. But it would just be more of the same lethargy and irresponsibility, and it wouldn't be progress for the other kind of person to let a plan go. It would just be one more time that they strengthen their lack of willpower. And it's a spiritual problem. It's not just an organizational or scholastic problem. It's a spiritual problem. Each of these things are spiritual problems. So as we go through the different things in here, or in the Gospels, especially in the Gospels, you're going to notice when Jesus is talking to one person, he's going to have a prescription that's very different than when he's talking to another person. And yet, when we give sermons in church or give Bible studies when we're trying to do our evangelism, we'll take a verse where Jesus said to do something when he's talking to somebody, and we'll if it fits what we're trying to convey, the point we're trying to make, we'll marshal that text and read it and say, "See, this is what you're supposed to do." But we don't know if that's what that person would be told by Jesus. We don't know. We need to be very humble about that, because there's some very, very different kinds of advice being given. The two sisters in the family of 3 people that we know that Jesus was closest with, like when it was his day off, he'd go there to maybe play a video and make some microwave popcorn and some mini pizzas in the microwave, maybe some nachos, and sit on the couch and go, his friends, whenever I'm there, that's where I stay, was a brother and two sisters that lived together. Apparently, none of them married. Possibly they lost their parents when they were young. Possibly the brother was older and kind of had to raise the little sisters and act like the dad figure because he was quite a few years older. And then they had an uncle that was kind of looked like he might step up to the plate, but instead what he did was abuse one of the girls when she was little, and that set her on the wrong course. And she, whether she got into substance abuse, we don't know about that, but she was actually into prostitution and had all kinds of trauma, and Jesus was helping her all the time. But that wasn't the primary relationship. The relationship was these were his closest friends. You can have close friends that are they've got problems. Your closest friends can be people that they got their issues, and when you know about them, you know they have their issues. Luckily, that's true. Otherwise, none of us would have any close friends because we have our issues. I mean, we've got stuff. Don't you have stuff? It's like, well, I don't want to share that with most people, but I got some issues. Got some issues. But Jesus' closest friends were a family that was all goofed up. But that's where he went for recharging, for plugging in and actually charging his batteries and not having to actually be spending power. He went there to be ministered to. And the young woman that had been mistreated, or at least that we have the most overt evidence that she was mistreated, she was not one of those kind of people that makes a plan and sticks to it and can get things done. She was the kind of person who just kind of forgets herself in the moment, and she does stuff that's socially unacceptable, and people kind of look down on her because, well, for one thing, everyone in town knows that she's a prostitute, and she can say, well, no, I was a prostitute. I've turned over a new leaf, and they say, how many times have we heard you say you turn over a new leaf? You know what I mean? Let's see, let's watch our watch and see how long this new resolution lasts, and then someone will find you, see you coming out of the Motel 6 with who knows who. It's kind of like that with her. And that was all right with Jesus as far as, yeah, these guys have their problems. Then the other sister was so anal retentive that she could never let down and stop frantically working at stuff. She was a caterer, and she just always took on, and even if something wasn't going on, she'd make it up and had to do it. If Jesus would come visit, she's like, I gotta go make a gourmet meal. And she's in the kitchen the whole time. It's like, hey, come on out. Hey, all the income free. Come on, let's talk. You're missing the movie. You're not even watching the movie. There's so much to do, and somebody won't help, so I have to do the whole thing. And somebody is like, knock yourself out, I'm out here. And Jesus had a very different prescription for one of those women than he had for the other. And if we take his advice that he gave to one person, and then we write it on a prescription pad, word for word, and give it to the wrong person, it's like giving chemotherapy to somebody who has no cancer. It's like giving antibiotics to somebody who has no infection. It's like removing a perfectly healthy appendix. That's not a good plan. And hey, while you're here, we got a special today on tonsils. And hey, we could finance an amputation. Have you ever thought about what would you think if you had an ostomy bag forever? I could do an ostomy. I can give you half off on an ostomy. It's ridiculous. You have to find out where someone is before you find out what kind of treatment to apply. And Jesus was a master of that. And we're not a master of recognizing it when we grab whatever sounds like our program for that person. That's not humble. In Steps to Christ, in this version with the picture of the UN building and Jesus knocking on it, there's a chapter called repentance. We've already talked about, in the first chapter, God's love for man. And by the way, you realize this book starts off with some sort of heresy? You realize that this book, actually, the first sentence is kind of like, if people would read it and listen to it instead of like read it like, if they'd actually listen to what it's saying and go, oh, hey, wait a minute, we don't say things like that. And at the time, it was a, hey, we don't say things like that. Nature and revelation alike testify of God's love. Revelation, I mean, that's Christian code for the Bible and for preaching from the Bible. We go to church and we are preaching from the Bible. We study theology. We have doctrine. It's been revealed to us. The first word in this Steps to Christ book is nature. Nature and all that other stuff alike testify of God's love. So we're already off on a, hey, don't encourage those people that say, today I'm having Sabbath out in the woods. Well, I hope you took your Bible and your Sabbath school quarterly. Yeah, that's just the thing. I didn't take anything. I just went out there with my heart. Dude, that's the third time this month. And this is only the third Sabbath of this month. Nature and revelation alike. So, I mean, we're already off on that kind of a foot, so you know where we're going with this thing. Then it talks about the sinner's need for Christ. And this is important. I want to hear those sinners recognize their need for Jesus. I'm glad, because it goes through and it talks about, how important it is when you're such a sinner. Mary, the one that had been abused as a kid and who went the wrong direction, probably as a result, she needed to understand her need for Christ, and she obviously did understand her need for Christ. So for people like that, that's important. I'm not really like Mary. I mean, in some ways maybe, but I didn't never be a prostitute or never be able to rely on me for anything. I'm not all the way over there. And then repentance. Repentance is important because if you never get to the point where you're actually totally have a change of heart about the bad stuff. I mean, say somebody does something to hurt you. You're in a relationship with them. You're in a romantic relationship with someone. And then they tell you that they've got to study. And you say, okay, because I was hoping we could, maybe go to Calistoga and go to Buster's or whatever Sunday. I would love to, but I gotta study. I mean, you've been dating this person since you were a sophomore in high school. It's serious business. You've been thinking maybe playing your life with the person, and the discussion has come up, and it seems to be mutual. And then you go, okay, well, maybe next weekend we could do that, because I'm slammed this whole week. I can't do it after classes, and I got to work, and so I was kind of hoping. Well, no, I got a project. Okay, so then you go. Well, I still got to put gas in my car because I got to go to my clinical or whatever. So you get in the car halfway through the afternoon, and you drive down to the Chevron, and you're standing there pumping gas, and a car goes by, and there's your person in it with someone else. And it's got bench seats, and they're not clear over to the door, and they're not driving. They're in the middle, arms around some other person. You're going, well, that's a problem. I mean, what kind of feelings do you get when I say that? That hurts. You don't want that. You go, what kind of idiot would do that to someone else? I mean, just be honest until, if you're tired of the relationship, then you haven't sealed it, it's not permanent yet, just tell me politely and walk away. But don't like start something else and see how it goes before you take me off the hook. Come on. So then, this is a crisis, and you meet with a person that night in the cafeteria, like way over in the corner. And people say, "Hey, could we join you?" Well, no, not this time. You've already put all the chairs there from your table away as a signal, and you go and you're dealing with heavy stuff. And a person says to you, "Okay, so it wasn't a good idea. So, okay, I'm sorry. Can you just forgive me and let's just go along. Don't get so uptight about it. Just let it go. Why don't you just let it go? Okay, I'm sorry. You forgive me? So just let it go." But you don't feel like it's time to let it go. Because what they're giving you is, "Oh, I said I'm sorry. What else is there?" It's like, there's "I'm sorry," and there's "I'm devastated by what I did, and I've got to change something in me because I can't live like this." What would it take so that you feel okay again, and like you might trust? What would that person have happen in them so that maybe you consider, we can make this okay? What would you feel from them? Do you sense the difference? This chapter on repentance looks at that question. When you really are devastated by what you did and you find that part of you abhorrent, it's different than saying, "Okay, what's the formula here? I got a this and I got a that. I'm going to fill out one of these forms and I got a that," and say, "Okay, check. Okay, I'm ready to be baptized. I'm ready to be rebaptized. I'm ready for communion. Now I can start fresh." Okay, I can start fresh. But it's not that big of a deal to you. It's just, yeah, there's a process, and I'm glad there is. Yeah, it's grace, lucky thing, or I'd be screwed. But then it's not like, I don't know how I'm going to live with myself. I don't know how I'm going to live with myself. There has to, this self, I wouldn't want a relationship with this self. This self has to die. Or whatever it is that could actually be eligible for real spirituality can't move in. There's already occupants. It's already occupied. There's someone there. There's stuff on that bunk. Clear over on page 17 in this version, but if you have an older version, which I hope you actually have this one, it would be somewhere like page 30. God does not regard all sins as of equal magnitude. So sin is not sin. Okay, you sin. I took a pencil. I'm not even sure whose it was, but I didn't pay for it. It was just sitting there, and I took it. I was probably thoughtless, like a mechanical pencil. It's a sharp. I didn't take it down to Lost and Found, and now I've got this nice pencil, mechanical pencil. It's probably like $20, and I got it now. I've had it. And you're going, that was not ideal. But that's probably different than like beating somebody half to death because you want their new Air Jordans or whatever. It's just not the same, Or something, the gross things to go to prison for, you kill somebody, you rape somebody, those kinds of things. Well, God does not regard all sins as of equal magnitude. I can accept that. I don't either. If you wrong me, you can wrong me and I can go, "Oh, no big deal." Or you can wrong me and I can say, "Dude, what the heck?" So there's a difference. There are degrees of guilt in his estimation, as well as in that of man. So in other words, we think so too. We agree with this. But there's those gross sins. Think about the really gross sins. They're really the stinky ones, the disgusting, nasty, pants down sins, the horrible ones. Yuck sins. I'm sure that's what God has in mind here. But however trifling this or that wrong act may seem in the eyes of men, no sin is small in the eyes of God. Man's judgment is partial, imperfect. But God estimates all things as they really are. The drunkard is despised and is told that his sin will exclude him from heaven. You can add some other things in there too. You know, the pervert that's on the Megan's map list, you know, that you probably never should let out of prison. The horrible people that hurt children and stuff, you know. People that do terrorism things. While pride, what? Pride, selfishness, and covetousness too often go unrebuked. Pride, selfishness, and covetousness. But these are sins that are especially offensive to God. These are the ones that really stink. Someone should have lit a match or sprayed. That's the ones that really stink in God's nostrils, to use biblical language. For they are contrary to the benevolence of his character. Well, why do they stink so much when those other gross sins, you know, the person like laying in the gutter, stoned out of his mind, and peeing on himself in the same clothes for 7 weeks, we go, okay, well, that's not even coming in the house. Close that off before we even bring him in to give him a bath, you know. But those others are contrary to the benevolence of God's character, to that unselfish love, which is the very atmosphere of the unfallen universe. He who falls into some of the grosser sins may feel a sense of his shame and poverty and his need of the grace of Christ. But pride feels no need. Hey, I'm good. I got this. Yeah, you got a little meditation action there. You're going to teach me some Bible reading plan that can make me have a good feeling and be a little more motivated. I'll listen to that right after my Tony Robbins tapes. You know, I'll do that after my mindfulness meditation. Let's add it to the list. I'm open. But pride feels no need. And so it closes the heart against Christ and to the infinite blessings he came to give. What is the yuck that's particularly abhorrent to God? It's that attitude of success and, hey, I got this. That's the mark of a successful person today. That's so backwards. I don't think that it's really that different in our church cultures. I don't think it's that different in our religious cultures. We're pretty much, we champion the same things that the wider culture does, civilized stuff. If you didn't have enough pride, I don't even know if they'd be able to see their way clear to hire you to be one of our ministers. You know? We need a certain kind of person, and they need to be somebody who makes it attractive. And we have these discussions at high levels, and it's not, when I say in church, I don't just mean Adventist church. Other denominations are having the same discussions about people's sexuality, about how they keep their Sabbaths. We have a discussion on the nominating committee about whether somebody can be a deacon or they can teach Sabbath school or whatever, and what do they do on Sabbath and everything. But when do we say, no, I think they might covet. I think they might covet. That means not being satisfied with what you got, so you want what else someone else has. I think they covet. It's the coveting that directly, not indirectly, like if you do that, you're going to wish you hadn't. Well, that's probably true, but I'm going to do it anyway. But the direct stuff that says, you wanna know the formula for never being able to be happy? Just don't be happy with what is reality. Always, whatever you have, want what someone else has instead. There, automatically, you're never gonna be happy. That's a straight shot, right for the neck. No roundabout, we'll get it later, right now. And that's how the Ten Commandments caps off the list. That's the 10th commandment. We'll see you on Wednesday.